Welcome back to Uncovered. We have I'm just going to call you our resident nutritionist.
I think that's a great
I'll take that. I'll take that.
So we have Rebekka back on our podcast. Today we are going to get really specific and talk about meal planning for a training session. So our last chat with Beck, we talked about so many different things, and we do have her lined up for a few more things as well in the future, which is exciting. But we did get a lot of feedback, from people about, what should I do for, a specific training session, etc. So we thought we'd get her on to talk all about that. So welcome back, Beck.
Thank you.
And we've got our lovely YouTube as well, our recording. So if you guys want to watch us, we will also, you can see our pretty faces.
We've got all of them except for our curves one on there because we had a bit of a mishap around the recording of that. So we're still figuring that one out. But yeah, it'll be on a couple of days after we release this on podcast.
Yeah.
Awesome. Which is exciting.
Okay, well, we might as well just dive into it. So what are like the main things that we need to know or we need to think about when we're planning our meals for a training session?
So what you eat is really important. So part of the meal needs to be fat, carbohydrate, protein. So we need to have the macronutrients, but also the timing. So making sure you're not eating too far away from your training. So you then have metabolized all of that food and the energy is processed through the system. And then partway through your training, you get a bit dizzy or you get a bit lightheaded or you suddenly run out of strength and feel kind of off.
Yeah.
So what's in the meal and the timing of the meal.
So I have
really important.
A real noob question.
Good.
So
they're good. They're good questions.
This is my strength today. I don't know very much about nutrition at all. So,
bring it.
Okay, I know I've got training today. When should I start preparing for like a really heavy training session? Like, is that just from like my breakfast or is it from the day before? Or
Well, every day counts. Every single day counts. So, like, say you are not just starting, you've been polling for a while.
Yeah.
And so, you got your regular classes, you might have some training sessions booked in. Every single day is going to lead into the next.
Yeah.
Particularly if you're recovering from another class or another session that you've done. And then you want to follow up with another class or another session in a couple of days. So you're always in a state of recovery. And then the next day that you start eating at breakfast, that'll obviously lead into, if you're doing a class that night, that's going to help you perform, but also then recover the day after. So every day actually links into the next. Okay. So really, every day counts. And
so that sugar I ate yesterday.
Oh, it's good. It's not a bad thing. You're going to use that for energy, right?
Exactly. I think I expensed that all yesterday.
It's time to eat some more.
Yeah. Let the caramel twirls out.
I was like, did you stick to your amount of allocated lollies that you gave yourself?
No.
So we had some leftover lollies in the studio from like a group thing, and Steph yesterday was like, I'm going to allocate myself this many and I'm not going to eat any
Portion
more.
control. Yeah.
My portions were blown out.
So I guess around that, like how would say something like different types of foods react with your body in terms of like what would have those lollies done for Steph for training?
Well, if we think about what lollies are made up of, it's mainly glucose, so carbohydrate, sugar, whichever term you would like to use for it, and that is one of the main sources of energy for the body. And so that would have given you, from your food intake, instant energy to use.
Is that where we get these things with children where you give them some red cordial and they're bouncing off the wall?
Well, it's just a lot at once. Yep. Yeah. It's like, it's a lot
I felt like that yesterday.
And is it so, say with lollies, is it just more of like when you say the instant sort of energy, is there other food, like how come it's so instant? What makes it so instant?
Lollies on their own, being mainly glucose, not a lot of fat, if any, and not much protein, if any. So carbohydrate digests quite quickly in the system, so it's absorbed quite fast. So your body has that instant to use. It would be slowed down, though, if you had some protein or some fat with it.
Okay.
So the digestion and processing time changes depending on what else it's paired with. Sugar on its own, quick, because the brain's like, yes, instant energy, the muscles get it, boom, use it. But if you had like a full meal, say you got glucose that day from potato and you had chicken and vegetables and all sorts with a big meal, that carbohydrate would be processed more slowly.
Because there's more fats and proteins.
And protein, yep, which slows down the digestive processes. So in this situation, if you were training and you wanted some instant energy, carbs are the way to go.
Yep.
But if you wanted energy to last a bit longer and you wanted to be a bit more full as well, because there's not a lot of satiety out of lollies, then you'd have a meal which had more fiber, more protein, more fat.
Yep.
So the combination is important.
So say, for example, like I know a lot of our students, even one yesterday, she came in and trained, did a class, and then was doing 2 more classes later.
Heavy, wow. Yeah, that's full on. That's a couple
so
hours.
That happens a lot in our studio.
Especially since there's competitions coming up. We've got a student showcase coming up.
Yes.
So they're getting their training in and then they're wanting to do all the classes. So say for her, like having something so instant like that would get her probably through the first session and then she might crash after that, or what would happen?
If she started at breakfast, that's when you can start loading up your body with good food. So a protein, a fat, a carbohydrate source there at lunch, and then snacking in between. Like if you're going to do 3 hours worth of work, you're going to need a decent amount from the beginning of the day already in your system. Like I wouldn't wait until right at the end, just before classes. So you've got that digestion happening. You've already got energy in your cells. Your body is fueled and ready to go. But yeah, I'd say after the first hour, hour and a half, there needs to be something. Otherwise, she'd more than likely start to crash. And the third hour would be not very beneficial, not much fun.
And I was going to say the impacts on your muscles, if they're not fueled, is going to actually be quite big. And if you're going to be using your muscles in a way that you're not used to using them, then it's not going to be
You
great.
run out of steam.
Can we just go back to real basics and like, what are some very common carbohydrates, proteins, fats that you can just like throw in that's easy and you can throw into your thing? Because I'm thinking like, I'm like overwhelmed by some of these things, and I'm like, I know we hear them all the time, but like, what do they actually look like?
So is this for any meal or a meal pre-training?
Let's go pre-training, because that's what this one's all about.
Yeah, definitely. So with a meal pre-training, you would want to eat about an hour and a half, 2 hours before you train. So that gives time for digestion. So you're not digesting the food while you're on the pole, because we all know that is not fun and it could come up and out of the wrong end. So allow for some digestion, everything settles. Digestion takes a lot of energy as well. So you don't want your muscles to be compromised, because digestion's stealing the show, because it takes a lot of energy to break down your food. So you want to allow an hour and a half, 2 hours, depending on how big the meal is, how big the training session's going to be. But I would always recommend a starchy carb source, a protein source, and some fat. You don't need a lot of fat pre-training. It takes a long time to digest, so you don't want that impacting your training. But carbs, yes, for sure. Particularly with pole, you could be doing power moves, you could be doing slow choreo, you could be doing flexibility, you could be doing a lot of strength work. You're going to need carbs for all of those things. And protein's going to make you more satisfied, so it's a slow processing of digestion. So you're going to be more full, but you're going to need that protein not only for at the time muscle and the muscle doing work, but also the recovery. So you want to think about your food. What do I need it now for, and what do I need it for tomorrow?
So I've got 2 things.
Go.
So firstly, you did a chat recently that I listened to, which was great. Is that available for people to listen to after?
Yeah, absolutely. I can put it up for sale.
Yeah, so Beck talks a lot about, she goes into like what is a macro and that sort of stuff, like explaining protein and its uses, and like even I forget sometimes, like you always think, oh, protein, muscle building, but you know, you made some really good points about what other really important things protein does as well. So I just wanted to sort of highlight that. And the other thing that I had down to ask you is, does it matter, like say if you're doing a strength session, is there different foods you should be eating compared to doing like a flexibility session, or does your body recognize different types like cardio versus...
Yeah, totally.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, that's a really good question. So I reckon we start right at the beginning. How does your body make energy?
Yes.
Like, what does it use for, and how does it actually get used? So your body will metabolize the foods that you eat, so from protein, from fat, from carbs, and it converts it into ATP, which is used at a cellular level. It's called adenosine triphosphate. Getting into the science.
Yes.
I was like, ATP, I'm like, you're going to have to explain.
ATP. Yep.
Yeah, you're going to
so
have to explain
you actually use that as energy. by your cells. And if you think about what your cells are doing, they're going like your muscle contraction. When you pull yourself up on a pole, that's going to be using ATP. So your body's used fat, it's used protein and carbs to make this chemical, and your body at a cellular level uses that chemical for energy. So it's not like your car, you put unleaded in, you burn unleaded. Your body, you put all these foods in, you make it into something a little bit different in order to use energy. So,
Okay.
So regardless of what it is, it makes it all into the ATP.
it does. Yep. And then your body, depending on the type of activity you're doing, will prioritize whether it be more of a fat or more of a carb burning activity. So say you're doing like a really slow, central, chill choreo session. You're more in the aerobic pathway, which is more of a fat burning fuel tank that you're taking from.
I like that concept.
Yeah.
Different
Well,
fuel
that's what it's going to
tanks.
be
You've got a
like.
few.
Yeah, that's what it's going to be like. So it comes into this thing and putting it back into the unleaded analogy. So these foods come in and they become ATP. Yep. And then does ATP then decide which tank it goes into?
No, ATP is the one that's burnt.
Okay.
Is
But
the, is
so
the
that
final
is our
product.
tank.
Fat and glucose have been pulled in
Okay.
to create ATP.
So they're our fuel and then our fuel. Okay.
Yeah.
I still feel like I'm lost, but keep going,
No,
keep going.
that's
I'll
okay.
pick it
That's
up. I'll
fair.
pick it up.
But at the end of the day, if we simplify it and we just say fat and carbs pretty much.
Yep.
So at a slow pace, so right now we're in the aerobic pathway, we always burn fat and carbs together. But it's just at a certain ratio. So in the aerobic pathway right now, we're burning more fat than we are carbohydrates because we're not moving very quickly, our heart rates are low, and it's a long process. We're going to be sitting here for a while chatting. Similar if you were doing a slow dance class. More in the aerobic pathway, more fat burning. You're still burning carbs, though. You can never just burn one. Your body is dynamic. But in the event, that slow choreo became some powerful, hectic strength trick, you'd be in the anaerobic pathway for a moment. And you'd be burning more carbs all of a sudden and less fat.
Yep.
Because it's instant energy you need.
Yeah.
So fat's a very slow fuel tank to access.
Yep.
Carbohydrate, instant. So if we got up now and ran down the street, carbs be burning.
Okay.
If we sat back down, heart rate comes down, back into the fat burning.
So the fuel tanks are the carbs and the fats.
Pretty much, yeah.
Okay.
Let's keep it
Yes.
simple there. Let's keep it simple there, but that's pretty much what it is.
And then it's what your body pulls from depending on
Your
what you're
activity.
doing, and then it transfers it all. I don't know if that's the right word, into the ATP.
Pretty much, yeah.
Okay. I
You get that? Yes. Hopefully, you guys are following along home. Some of you probably will know a lot more than me and Steph.
It's so complex, and
Yeah.
it's, in the event we, spewed out all of these amazing scientific words, like that'd be cool, but it becomes really quite intensive to take on and digest. So it's keeping it simple with the fat and the carb burning, I think will make it easier.
And especially
100%.
since, like, for a lot of people listening, like, not everyone is going to want to know everything. But,
Yeah,
you
totally.
kind of need to know enough. Like, you want to understand without knowing, being, like, really particular about it. Like, I've been really interested in nutrition, and I even thought about studying it. But then I realized I just kind of want to understand. I didn't want to know everything. I just wanted to understand.
I think understanding what the body does, though, can help you look at food a little bit differently.
Yeah.
And look, food is challenging because a lot of us have an emotional attachment to it.
Indeed.
We were talking last night about, the children who are born and they've got to be fed through a tube their whole life. And we're like, oh my God, like all the things they're missing out on because people can make food so great that it's actually experience
It is.
rather than just,
Yep.
I need this in my body right now. Then we also talked about all the time you would save by not cooking and not doing everything that you needed to do with food. But food can be pleasure for people. So being able to look, to understand what it's doing might be able to help them make better decisions.
Yeah, big time. So I guess no matter what class you're going to do, no matter what training you've got planned, it's ideal to have all three macronutrients.
Yeah.
But I would definitely prioritize carbohydrate and protein over fat because you're going to need a lot of fuel for a decent amount of time because generally we're at least at the studio for an hour. At least.
Minimum.
We
Yeah.
can get pretty lost sometimes and be there for 2 to 3, which is great.
It happens.
But we also want to think about the digestion of the foods. So we want it to be digested enough so we can use it, but not still hanging around in the system. So not a really high fat meal because it's going to take a long time to get through and you don't want digestion impacting your training.
So what carbs and protein can I have 1.5 hours, 2 hours before training? What would be like a really good example of a meal, like eggs or whatever those things?
Great question. Look, it's really up to personal preference.
Yes.
So that's where I'll start. It depends. It always depends. I would say whole foods are going to give you more nutrients than, say, like a protein shake is totally fine. Ain't nothing wrong with it. But if you could have some real food, that would be epic. But in the event you're low on time and you need something to digest quickly, a protein powder is wonderful and convenient and still gives you what you need. So I would say pick something that digests really well. The last thing you want is gas when you're at pole. No, like that would be the worst.
I had
Sneaky
that down
farts come out.
I had
all
that
the
down on
time.
my list. Is there and I guess it's depending on your body, but are there foods that make you more gassy that you want to try and avoid before?
There are, So foods that ferment, which are mainly starchy carbohydrate. But everyone digests food really differently.
Sure.
So, like, for example, if somebody is like super sensitive to cabbage, because cabbage is highly fermentable and they normally get a bit bloated afterward, I wouldn't be having like coleslaw at lunch to go train in the afternoon and all of a sudden you've got farts everywhere because it's so uncomfortable and it really impacts your energy and also your self-confidence because we don't wear a lot in the studio.
No.
So pick things that digest really well and sit nicely. But as I said, whole foods are a better priority than other foods. So
And when you say whole foods, it's like
if you can grow it, if you can kill it.
the things that are generally on the outsides of a supermarket.
Absolutely. Yeah. That's a good way of putting it.
Yeah, I've heard that before. And I'm like, that's the way I sort of think. Then I'm like, oh, but on the outside they have all the special things, and then there's caramel twirls.
Yes.
Helpful.
There's always a loophole.
Exactly.
So going back to the digest, how do you know how your body's digesting something? Because I know that sometimes when I am teaching, I am kind of like, oh, like I do feel a little bit more gassy today than normal. Like I better not.
Sneaky fart.
But like, and then I don't know, I haven't really quite thought, oh, it's the foods I'm eating. I just thought, oh, I'm just a bit gassy today. So how would you then go identify what foods would make you?
Great question.
Yeah.
It takes time. So you've really got to be mindful about your eating at the time and chewing your food. That's where it all starts.
Oh, yeah. I remember you said that on your talk recently.
Chew. It should take about 20 minutes to eat a main meal.
Oh, gosh.
I know. Because if you don't chew, you've got these big hunks of food hitting your gut and there's no teeth down there.
No.
There's acid and enzymes and bacteria. No
Renee
teeth.
and I just look
No
super
teeth.
guilty right now.
You know what the funniest thing is, though? When I was listening to Beck's talk last week, I turned my screen off for a second because we're talking about nutrition and food. It was making me really hungry.
Yeah.
So
Your brain's like, oh my God, that's a great idea.
Food, and then it just came to the part where she was talking about chewing, and I'm like swallowing, and I was like, oh shit.
There goes a chunk.
I know.
Seriously. So that's part of it.
Yeah, and I think that knowing why, like I know that when I started reading up a lot about nutrition, knowing what things do, like what foods do to your body and why really does help, because otherwise I will literally just swallow my food. And for me, eating is like a chore. Like I do enjoy it.
Yeah, fair enough.
But even going out for dinner or going somewhere, I'm sort of kind of like, okay, we'll sit down, eat, and then like go.
Yeah.
So for me, I do find it really hard to just sit down and chew because I'm like, I could be doing other better things right now.
And there's definitely that concept of I've got lots to do, I need to be somewhere. But without the food and the fuel, you can't do the things and you can't be the places. And you can't do it very effectively. So the fuel is the energy currency. It needs to be the priority. Chewing is the first start of digestion. So you don't just digest food down here. It starts in your mouth with the saliva breaking it down, as well as the mechanical chewing and actually creating, it's called chyme. It's effectively like this, slob gloop stuff that you would see if you looked inside your stomach after eating, but it's got to be broken down. It's got to be broken down. Then it hits your gut. And you've got acid down there. So that'll break down protein.
Yep.
And then into your small intestine, you've got enzymes that'll break down fat, protein, carbs, and absorb some stuff. And then it keeps going and you've got bacteria for the rest of the way. And that will keep absorbing and moving waste through, moving non-digestible fiber through to make a poop.
So then what happens when you swallow your food whole? It's like...
Oh, it'll hit your gut and it will take ages to break down and maybe come out whole.
I was like, it's just made me think about now. I know this is super off topic, but one of my friends does colonics. So
yes, okay. I was like, where are you going?
I was like, I have not discussed this with anybody yet before bringing this up. Fair enough. But have you done any research, or do you know much about colonics and how that will? Does that also can that also play a really good part in?
I don't have the research. I haven't looked into the science behind it. It is effectively a bit of a spring clean, a bit of a wash for your large colon. But in the event you do eat food and you don't chew it very well, you'll pass it almost whole or in its more whole form than when you put it in. But really, you should chew it right down to a level where it's unrecognizable. So when it hits your stomach, easy to break down, easy to process, keeps moving through, easy. You're not getting like blockages in your pipes. Because if you think about it, your intestines are just a bunch of pipes. True. And if there's really big hunks of something in the pipe, and there's nothing mechanically to break it down, which was your teeth up here, then it's going to be hard to process. So if you're not chewing your meal, that's where gas can come from. If you're eating foods that you don't digest well, so some people just don't do lactose real well. So if you're going to be like, I really want that cheese, but I've got a pole session later and you know cheese is just not good for your guts, I'd avoid it.
I do have a story to share on the digestion, which will probably help people think very differently about the way their body works. I know dogs have similar but different bodies to us, but I used to have a dog and I had two, and one was really food motivated to the point that she would steal food out of the other dog's mouth. Oh, wow. So we gave them both a Cheerio, or people call them little boys, like little sausage Cheerios. Sort of thing. And we gave them both Cheerios, and she ate hers and he ate his, and we thought it was fine. A couple of days later, he just starts vomiting. And then we took him to the vet, and they're like, there's an obstruction. Like, we're just going to have to do some stuff. We'll call you. So it turns out this Cheerio made it all the way through to his, I don't know, is that your colon?
Your large intestine.
Yeah, and made it all the way through, and it had not digested a bit. Yep. So they're like, there's something here.
So the dog didn't chew it?
Didn't chew it. And it just like this, so this Cheerio was just like,
we're not too different.
Way through. Like, it made me think about Cheerios differently.
I was going to say, because Cheerios are very highly processed.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, it just like clogged him, literally.
Yeah. So chew, people.
Yeah,
chew your meals.
Your food.
Yeah, next time you're eating, think about the Cheerio.
Absolutely.
I used to hear something about like, what was it? However many like chews for like every bite or something.
I don't even know what they were talking about, 30 or something.
It used to be like a thing. It was like 30 and I'm like 1, 2, all right, it's gone.
So by 10, I'm done.
Yeah, a bit of bread's going to take less chews than a bit of steak.
That's true.
So you've just got to break it down so it's mushy and really enjoy it. Like we always say, I love to eat good food. I like the taste, I like the smell, I like the texture. Then why are we inhaling our food and not actually experiencing it?
So we can get more.
I did try and...
But yeah, I agree with you.
I was like, I did try and chew an oyster the other day and that didn't work very well.
That's different, surely.
Yeah, surely. That's different. That's gooey. That can just go straight through.
So you mentioned before that the body, so it gets in and the stomach is only taking a little bit of protein because the acid is there. And then you said
the stomach will break down protein mainly because of the acid.
Okay, so does it absorb the protein there, or is it all absorbed in our intestines?
Keeps moving through.
Okay.
There is mostly absorption in the intestines, but there is some absorption in the mouth as well. So at every point there's a little bit, but most of it will happen in the intestines.
So how long does food stay in the stomach for before it moves on then?
It really depends. It's hard to tell because everyone's so different. Some people have really slow transit time. Some people have really quick transit time. It will depend on what you've eaten as well. So as I said, like red meat, a lot more difficult to process, break down, metabolize and pull apart by your body, whereas a bit of bread will move through very quickly. It also depends on your basal metabolic rate, so how fast your metabolism is or what your metabolism runs at. It'll also depend on how often you're eating. So someone that's eating 3 times a day versus someone that's eating 6, there's going to be constantly food moving through. It's really hard to put a time frame on it. But you'll notice because you'll start getting hungry and the hunger hormone is signaling that your stomach is empty. So there's not much in there. So your brain's like, oh, go fill that up again. You need to eat again.
Interesting.
Can it be wrong? Can the hunger signals be wrong?
when it's wrong, I think it's just skewed by other things.
Yeah.
So it's not necessarily incorrect, but what we perceive it as might be, and the reason for it. So people say they feel hungry, but they're really bored. They're like, no, I've got a hunger sensation. Did you eat 10 minutes ago? Yes. But did you not chew it? Did you inhale your food and you weren't emotionally and physically satisfied by that food? So you feel hungry, but you've just eaten a whole meal. So there could be an emotional hunger there rather than a mechanical.
I know I get, and it's only been recently that I've been a little bit more mindful of what my body's been doing because I had my gallbladder removed.
Yep, fair enough.
So that changed my whole
Totally.
digestive system because my bile is not coming in the same way. And I started noticing like hunger. I often get hungry and I'm like, I don't know why I'm hungry, but I actually think it's anxiety. So I've actually picked up that when I'm anxious, I get hunger pain. So I'm like, sometimes I'll go like,
so you can do something or so you can focus on something? Or you just don't know?
I'm not still working through those finer details. But like I have to go, cool, have I eaten? Have I actually fueled myself enough? Have I actually had enough food? But like initially I would just be like, oh man, like I'm hungry again. So I'd just eat. And then I'm like, oh, actually, I think like there's something different going on here.
That is awesome. Good on you for listening. And that's really what it's about, is listening to your body.
It took a surgery for me to listen to my body.
Well, sometimes it does.
Yeah.
And that's totally okay.
Yes.
But as I mentioned before, the mechanical versus the emotional hunger and satiety. Like hunger is multifaceted. It's not just eat food, fill gap. You are so much more dynamic than that. And like the way you eat your food, whether you inhale it, whether you're stressed out while you're eating it, whether you are eating it in a rush and not paying attention versus chilling out, being completely undistracted, eating slowly, chewing it, experiencing your food, that'll give you a different satiety and contentment from eating that meal physically and emotionally versus if you eat it in a really stressed, busy, distracted, oh my God, I've got to get this done state.
I feel like we do that with our chicken and cheeses. We enjoy them and we eat them really slowly from Zarafas.
Yeah, we do.
Love that. That's great.
And another thing I've heard, which I don't know if is a myth, but some people have said that if you're hungry, you might be thirsty. Is that true?
Again, it depends, not really. Like hunger, if you think about hunger at a basic level, it's your body signaling your stomach is empty.
Yeah.
So ideally, you want to make sure you're getting enough water every day. Water's absorbed pretty easily, pretty quickly. It doesn't take much for you. You don't have to do much. It's absorbed. So if you're hungry, I would listen to that cue and be like, I'm hungry, let's feed that. But like you did, over time, if you notice that hunger is not really a physical hunger, it's more emotional, or it's attached to some other emotion or some other circumstance, then we have to look deeper into it. But I really tell people, listen to your hunger and fullness cues and to eat when you're hungry.
Yeah.
But if you're finding yourself wanting you're hungry all the time, then there's got to be a look at what am I eating? What's the quality of the food? So nutrients are going to be so much better for you than just, inhaling packets of chips all day.
Yep.
And then the satiety will come from the type of food it is. So protein takes longer to digest. So you're not going to be very hungry if you're eating 3 solid protein meals a day, maybe a snack with some starchy carbs, again, slower transit time. If you're eating potato, which actually has the highest satiety level of all the foods, it's number 1 of the satiety scale.
Oh, really?
That's a thing.
What is this?
Satiety.
It's how full a food makes you feel. Potato is number 1.
Interesting.
Everyone who doesn't like potato?
Legit,
Like,
yeah, I
everyone
know.
likes
Potatoes pretty good.
Pretty versatile.
But a lot of people go, oh, I'm going to try to lose weight. I'm just not going to eat potatoes because they're
Poor
carbs.
potato. Like, potato is not the problem. It's too many calories that are a problem.
too many potatoes.
It's
not the potatoes.
It's a deep fried
On its
potato.
own.
Sorry, were you going to say
Okay,
something?
no.
I was going to say, so what if someone doesn't feel hungry before
great
a
question.
training session? If maybe they've eaten in the morning, or I know a lot of people like, I haven't eaten all day, but I'm not hungry.
Yeah. So that's where it can be either skewed. So say someone's really stressed, that can lead to a suppression of appetite, or if somebody that hammers caffeine all day, that can suppress your appetite. There are certain medications that can suppress your appetite. So unfortunately, those cues aren't always correct if they're skewed by external sources. But if you're about to train and you've got an hour's worth of training ahead of you, even if you're not hungry, I would say to have something that's easy to digest and more carbohydrate based than anything.
Okay.
So, you know, take a banana with you, take a protein shake with you, squeeze some honey in it. So easy on the digestion, but I would go carbs, if not carbs and protein, if you can fit it.
So we've done our training session. We get home at 9 p.m. at night.
Hectic,
and we
do
want to
that.
be in bed by 10 a.m. or 10
10 a.m. Oh, yeah, you got a lot of time.
We want to be in bed by 10. Should we be eating a full meal before we sleep? Because
Well-
obviously it's going to give you energy.
Yes.
So then are you going to struggle to fall asleep?
Yeah.
Which is then going to impact your recovery and so on
said
and
it.
so forth.
Perfect. She's
Look
done
at
it.
me, I know things.
Steph, our new resident nutritionist.
Yep, I'm gone. See ya.
Yeah.
Bye. Yeah, it will impact your sleep. So you want to eat, but then you want to think, how am I going to sleep tonight? So there's got to be almost a bit of planning at that point. You definitely want to eat before you sleep because the recovery is going to be impacted and you're going to likely wake up at midnight, 1 a.m. hungry. You've used all this energy while you've been training, right? So at that point, I would say, well, what's the best possible solution here? So I don't impact my sleep much, but I still get what I need nutrients-wise. I would go a really easy to digest meal.
So like a protein shake or something.
Yes, they make a smoothie. You know, mainly, again, protein and carbohydrate with a little bit of fat, just so it doesn't take ages to digest. But look, smoothies are blended, so they're pre-digested anyway. There's not a lot of chewing.
Maybe
Not
we
like
just
chewing.
need to go to a smoothie diet. Everything
that's
just
a thing.
blend.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
You could do that at that time of night. So you'll get nutrients, get the energy, have the recovery tomorrow, but still have to sleep tonight.
So what's the best type of food for recovery then?
Protein and carbs, but having some fat always. So they're all three macronutrients at the end of the day. Again, getting mainly nutrients from whole sources purely because it gives you all the vitamins and the minerals that mostly processed foods won't give to you, which is going to help you then make enough energy for tomorrow. Your muscles will come back stronger because you also need brain recovery.
Yeah.
Like, think about all the crazy tricks that we learn and the choreo. Oh, my God, keeping up to the music and then just everything that your brain's got to take in during those classes. Your brain's got to recover, so do your muscles.
And on that note too, if you haven't eaten, your brain isn't getting, I assume your brain's not getting nutrients either. So then when you're trying to learn something in pole, it's really hard. I know yesterday I was in a meeting with Renee and I had to stop halfway and I'm like, can we continue this on a walk to Zarafas? Because I'm literally not functioning anymore. So I think that's even more important for you guys listening, that while you don't want to eat because, you know, it might make you feel bloated or whatever, obviously do all the things that Beck said and try to find the foods that make you feel best. But if you want to perform your best in the studio, food is your resource. Like that is everything you need.
Yep, your brain prefers carbohydrate. So your brain is like carbs for fuel.
Yep.
So in the event your blood glucose drops too low, simply because you haven't eaten for a while and you've just done a mad training session, so you've depleted your blood glucose even further, the way you felt yesterday was low blood sugars. So you start getting a bit foggy. Some people feel a bit dizzy. If it gets really bad, and you've probably seen this in class, people start to get really sweaty, a bit jittery and shaky, really low energy, almost need to sit down because they're going to pass out or spew. That's the body saying, we are low on the glucose. Go get some. Go get some food. So it forces you to stop and it forces you to eat something. But like if that ever happens in the gym where I train my clients, it will be, here's a Gatorade. Glucose into the bloodstream really quickly, and within 5-10 minutes they're good.
Yeah. So on my day of training, I should have like should I have like breakfast, lunch, and a bigger meal that hour and a half before, and then have a smaller meal a little later? It's obviously all depending on people, but like, like perfect world if we could all digest things really well and whatever else.
Totally.
But, so we would have like a decent sized breakfast, a decent sized lunch, and get those 3 meals before our training. And
that'd be awesome. Yeah, particularly if your training ends pretty late that night, and then you can have a smaller meal before you go to bed. And if you're doing a couple of classes in a row, like bring something to have quickly between classes. Like there's nothing wrong with having a banana between your classes because it's going to digest pretty quick. It's not going to hang out in your gut and cause problems unless you have a problem digesting banana, for example. So like if you think about athletes that do long endurance events, they will have something during the event to keep them fueled. So if you're doing multiple classes in a row.
That's where you get those gels and stuff, like the cyclists
it's
have the
glucose
gels.
and a few other things.
Interesting. So what about, I just thought before, like what part would water play in it?
Oh my God, a huge part.
Before and after, because I know that there are especially... Thank you, Steph.
Well done. Clearly my blood sugar levels are getting low.
Just the way she looked at me when she was like, said that. Because I know that there are like, there's fat soluble and water soluble, like, what are they called? Vitamins and stuff like that. But in terms of like, can obviously drinking too much water make you too sweaty? Or I know I say to the girls when they're doing a lot of like dynamic stuff, I'm like, you know, make sure you have some water in between, but don't scull your water. You don't want your belly full because then you go upside down and it's hasn't had that time to like go through. Is that correct?
Yeah, you want to make sure you're drinking enough water in the lead up to your session that day, and then during you're sipping water, definitely. Yeah, and you're right. We don't want to go sculling heaps because then the processing time for all of that is going to take time and it's going to be sloshing around in your stomach and not feeling very nice.
And you don't want to go upside down because you're just like,
Experience
exactly.
that.
So it's about just comfort level, so getting enough. And if you're sweating a lot, and in pole, I mean, I know we try not to because we're going to slip off. But say you do have a pretty sweaty sesh, water is not quite enough because you're going to lose some minerals through your sweat. So salting your food is actually really good to add that mineral back in because sodium is really important for electrolytes, so your hydration levels, but also for muscle contraction.
Yes. Is that to prevent cramp?
Partly.
Oh, yeah. Okay. Can we go on to cramps for a second? Because I get so many questions on people cramping. And
so
someone's
many people in the studio cramp,
someone came up to me and was like, what do I need? Potassium or magnesium? Like, I'm cramping. I'm just like, I don't know really.
Again,
like,
we don't really know.
You can't give a full answer. No. But like, what would potentially cause a cramp then?
Well, cramping is partly mechanical, partly physiological. So it could be a problem with the muscle itself, but the muscle contracting and releasing is partly governed by those minerals. So if you're thinking calcium, potassium, sodium, and obviously having enough water for the muscle to do that particular contraction.
When she says that particular contraction, for those who aren't watching the video, it's she's opening and closing her hand.
When you're flexing your muscle.
But that's a great one. That's a good one.
So if someone was like generally didn't cramp and then one day they were like, oh my gosh, I'm just cramping so much, what could that potentially be?
I just question how much water have you had today, and did you have yesterday? And then other things with females is where are you at in your cycle, because that can change your thirst as well and how much water you need or how much you're sweating. Like your hormones interact with everything that your body does. So where you're at in your cycle does change a few things. If you're on your cycle, like if you actually got your menstrual cycle, you're losing water at the same time. But generally I would say, how's your water intake today? Go have some water, and talk about salting foods. Sometimes as well, supplementing with magnesium is good. But again, it depends and it's hard to give an exact answer because there's so many facets to it.
So if somebody was like, cool, I've been listening to this, I really want to get better with like what I'm putting in my body.
Yes.
And I know for me, one thing is, you know, you hear all these people who are like, I supplement this and I supplement that. Where can people go to actually understand what their levels are and what their body is lacking?
Oh, well, you can go to your GP and ask for it's called a comprehensive metabolic panel. and tell your GP, I want to get everything tested. Test all my things. So it'll test things like liver function and immune function and kidney function. And then you can specify, what my magnesium looked at, and generally that'll get covered in your electrolytes and things like vitamin D and whatnot as well. You can actually go in and request that.
Yep.
So that would be a GP question. And then you can actually see, what are my blood levels like?
Is that something people have to pay for, or can they get?
Depends on the GP.
Okay, yeah.
So if you go in
and
with
it
a
also
problem,
depends on the blood people as well, because I lack vitamin D, and sometimes when I get it tested, because I always have to get my vitamin D tested, I get it tested, doesn't cost me, and then sometimes I get sent a bill for my vitamin D.
Yeah,
So it depends. It's very between GP and between the phlebotomist.
But that's a really good idea to get tested to see, because especially if you are having some issues and you don't quite understand that your instructor can't fix, like, oh, why am I cramping?
We're not doctors,
We
guys.
we can only do so much. I'm like, I'm here to teach you the technique of the trick. Like,
We want to be everything to everyone.
If only.
But yeah.
I mean, in saying that, so part of it is mechanical. So then, if you keep getting it and you're thinking you're hydrating well, you might have magnesium as a supplement, you're eating all these whole foods, that's where a physio would come in.
yeah.
And they can actually look at the mechanics of your body and what's happening in the muscle, in the joint and the surrounding, and then potentially help you fix that with stretches, exercises, trigger pointing, strengthening, that kind of thing.
So after you see your GP and you've got this list of things, who's the next person you go to? Because obviously your GP is probably just going to, I should probably not make assumptions, but for me, as an example, lacking vitamin D, don't think I can absorb it very well. So now I'm just on 3 vitamin D tablets daily.
Great question.
Who is the next person you go to?
You need to go to someone clinical, like a dietitian.
Okay.
Yep. Who can read blood tests and actually prescribe the dosages from those blood tests. I'm a sports nutritionist, so I don't have that clinical ability. So I can't help people with the blood test side of things.
Yep.
But going up to a dietitian level, that's where you'd go, and they'd be able to help you.
Interesting. But just for your basics, I want to understand what I should be eating on the day of a pole training session. We can come to you for that.
Oh, absolutely, 100%. So as I said before, protein, fat, carbs. Don't forget your non-starchy veggies.
What are non-starchy veggies?
So anything that doesn't grow out of the ground. So if you think about potato, sweet potato, pumpkin, carrot is not really. I mean, it's a root vegetable, but it doesn't have as much carbs as potato.
Okay.
So we talk about, and not as much starch. So if we talk about starchy versus non-starchy, think about the potato family and pumpkins as well. So they've got more starches in them, which is a slightly different form of carbohydrate. So the non-starchy stuff, everything else. All of your greens, all of your leaves, your cauliflower, your beans, tomatoes,
zucchinis,
cucumbers, zucchini, like everything else in the grocery aisle. You need a decent amount of those. And I do find people just don't eat enough.
No.
Yeah.
Vegetables are a huge source of fiber. So the stuff you need to help move everything through your pipes and come out easily the other end, very important. Also the vitamins and the minerals that it gives to you, that multivitamin's going to ever cover that.
No.
So what do you think then about the, I don't know if this is still the recommendation, but 2.5 cups of vegetables a day? Is that enough?
The problem with the cup thing, and it kills me because I don't tell my clients, no, you've right.
triggered her.
Let's think about.
But this is what people are seeing in the media, and this is what they're thinking about.
I mean, if you have a look at the Australian recommendations, that's likely what they use.
Yep.
But I find and this is getting a little bit trivial, but let's be realistic. What is 2 cups of baby spinach? Do I pack it in there?
That's true.
There's so much space between it.
What if I
If you blended it up, that would be heaps of spinach.
That'd be like kilos of the stuff. So I go handfuls.
Yeah, okay.
I tell my clients, have anywhere, depending on their digestion ability, 4 to 6 handfuls. So if you can picture yourself picking it up and sticking it on your plate, sweet. And that's just an easy visual. And everyone's hands are different.
Is that a day or a meal?
Day.
Okay, I was going to be I'm just thinking about these
6
handfuls.
Next minute, Steph's like
this mountain of vegetables. So
I'm just going to Woolies, guys.
So definitely include your veg across the day.
Yep.
But getting some protein at breakfast, lunch, and dinner is essential. So you're drip feeding yourself protein through the day. So don't just have it in one meal, because your body needs it continuously.
Yeah.
You can't get it from anywhere else.
Yes, that
You
was
have to eat it.
big thing I took away from your last talk.
Yep,
The
you
whole
can't
drip
get it.
feeding.
Whereas carbohydrate, you can get it from other ways. So you can actually turn protein into glucose. This is a very, backup system emergency if you don't have enough glucose in your bloodstream. But you can turn protein into glucose. It's called gluconeogenesis. Oh, yeah.
Oh.
Dropping the science.
Yeah.
So, as I said, it's a last scenario resort thing.
Yeah.
But you can't get protein from anywhere else. So if you don't eat it, you don't get it. And hell, we need our muscles. We want our muscles to keep working. And as you mentioned before, Renee, the other things that I talked about, protein doing, immune function.
Yeah.
You need the amino acids out of protein to support your immune system. And what helps you recover from POL? Your immune system.
True.
So get your protein in. And the other thing is liver detoxification. So you need amino acids from protein to detoxify your blood effectively. So really important stuff.
So my brain's just like, wow.
Crazy important. So that's why we're always like protein, go for it.
Yeah,
and what you
that's
eat,
true.
up to you. Mix it up, rotate it. If it's animal-based protein, it's got everything you need in a little package. So you don't have to think about going out and supplementing on top of that. Unless a protein powder is convenient for you, go nuts. If you're vegetarian or vegan, there's a little bit more attention you need to pay as to where you're getting your protein from, because there's only a certain amount of amino acids in each type of vegan protein. Whereas, animal-based protein, you get everything you need. So you can get it from either.
Can
You've
there
just
be
gotta-
too much protein?
You can. It's rare.
Yeah.
It's pretty rare.
I've heard you talk about before being like, look, I really rarely see anyone doing too much.
It's expensive and it's filling,
Yeah.
and most people are just like, I don't want to eat that much, So they generally don't. The only time I've ever seen it is like, back in the day, one guy, he was really little at the gym that I was training at. It was a small human and wanted to put on muscle. So he was eating just kilos of meat a day. Yeah. And that's one of the only times where I was like, I think you're overdoing it. Just not educated.
Yeah.
That's all.
And I think that's the biggest thing in society at the moment is education. And there's so many conflicting things. And my husband is reading a book about metabolic health. But one of the biggest things that comes out is the fads we go through and the fads that the food companies go through. Like 1 minute it's like, high fat meals are good. The next minute it's like low fat, no fat. And if you walk down a grocery aisle and you're uneducated, there's so many bright and shiny things at you that if you don't understand how to break down what's in that food, then it's going to be really challenging and you're probably not fueling your body right. So I think just having that basic understanding is important for everybody, especially in POL because of the crazy shit we do to our body.
Most definitely. On that, we have to think about those food companies aren't really thinking about our health.
No, they're thinking about profits.
Let's be honest, they're thinking about money. So we have to be informed shoppers and informed eaters and go in there and not be too distracted by the bright, shiny things, and understand we need protein to function at a basic level and think about health before you even think about anything else.
Yeah.
When health comes first, you'll likely be able to handle hectic POL sessions and recover really well. So health first. So what is going to make me healthy? So I guess we need to look at food like what is nutritious, what is delicious as well.
So you enjoy actually eating
Absolutely, yep. And what's going to make me feel good?
Yeah, we're going to do a whole nother episode on food mindset. I really loved that part of Beck's talk the other day about good and bad foods because, so many people come to me and it's just like, oh, I've just fallen off the wagon. It's like, you can still eat stuff that you enjoy.
Yes, totally.
You like being mindful about it, obviously, and knowing what is nutritious and what it's doing for your body. Because I currently have, I think it's it's not a, what is it, 700-gram jar of Nutella at home. And I eat it out of the jar. That's the only way I eat Nutella.
But it's just,
But
like
I love it.
resetting
I enjoy it.
one meal a week that is bad for you, or one meal every now and then is not going to hurt you.
Not
I
bad,
assume.
not nutritious.
Not nutritious. Sorry. Yeah.
Food
That's going to be mindset.
Food
Yeah.
Love that.
mindset.
But,
Love that.
like, it's, you have a bad day. It's, guys, just pick it back up the next day and do the things that are right. The biggest challenge with eating healthy is making the time and planning for it. So, and we all go through phases.
Habits as well.
Yeah, we all go through phases where we're like, I'm going to plan the whole rest of the year. I just did that recently.
Nice.
And I'm going to get my shit done. I'm going to eat healthy. I'm going to do this. And then yesterday I had KFC for dinner because I wasn't organized. So like it happens. And that's okay.
It's like that shower TikTok one I sent you. It's like you get so motivated in the shower. You're like, I'm going to do this. I'm going to cure cancer. And then the next morning you're like sleeping.
That is me.
That's not happening.
I was struggling this morning. So I'm like, I'm going to go for a shower so I can like set my intention for the day.
Beautiful. I love that.
I like have to do it. But, okay. So where can people find you if they want to prepare themselves better for their pole training?
Absolutely. So on Instagram, my Instagram is Rebekka Batten. So it's 2 Ks instead of 2 Cs in Rebekka Batten. I'm online as well, elitehealthandtraining.com.au. So I do have the ability to take online clients for nutrition and training as well as face-to-face. So based in Brisbane, but, you know, the online world's just opened up the ability to connect with anybody and everybody and polers from around the world.
Yeah.
So...
And especially with the nutrition side of things, you don't need to be face-to-face at all.
At all. No.
Yeah.
So it's really all about just finding out your habits and behaviors, what you're doing now, and then what your goals are, and then I step you up to get to that point. So it's not about, oh, here's your food diary, that's all wrong, do this. It's about changing your habits
chicken,
and your
rice and
behaviors.
broccoli for the next 12 months.
That's not a thing. You've really got to learn what works for you and what doesn't and tune into that. So like we were talking about earlier, really listening to your body, listening to the signs and signals and taking some time to just prepare food, enjoy food and making sure it's a daily ritual for you, like brushing your teeth. You know, it's a ritual and we need to eat to live. And if we're going to be amazing polars, we need to eat to perform and recover. There's nothing worse than, you know, having to leave class or sit down because you're feeling like your energy is low. You know, you want to train and you want to have a good time and you want to come back and do it all again. But we need energy for life as well as pole.
So true.
We need to eat.
That is the perfect way to end this. You just like smashed it.
You're welcome.
We need energy for life and for pole. Love it. All right, guys. If you are loving Uncovered, you know where to find us. Come see us on Instagram. We are now also on YouTube. Just search Uncovered for pole dancers. We will link all of Beck's amazing details below. We hope you guys have found this helpful and we'll be talking about nutrition all week on our Instagram with our little tell us section. So we want to know what you want to know more about too, because we now have a resident nutrition on board. So guys, there's lots to talk about and this is so important for your pole journey. But yeah, until next time, see you all soon.
See you later. Bye. Yes.
That's so good. There was so much in that.